even on our worst day, we really want what's best for you.
If you give me a list of people who are teaching and I'm like, who is this person? I'm going to have some conversations about why are we putting this person in a position where they might fail.
It weirds me out when someone calls me pastor. My first name happens to be Andrew.
Your pastor laughs at things that you probably hide from him.
Welcome back to the Practically Pastoring Podcast. My name is Frank, and I'm glad that you are here. The whole gang is here. I'm down in Safety Harbor, Florida. Up in Baltimore, Maryland, we got Jeffrey Simpson.
Oh, is this on? Hey, guys.
Down in Sumter, South Carolina, we got Delmar Pete.
Hello, hello.
Next to me in the Morning After Ministry Studios, we got Andrew Larson.
I mean, we're in the worship center, but you can call it whatever you want. That's
and
fine.
Timothy Miller.
Hey.
Guys, it's good to be here. We are a week out chronologically from the Practically Pastoring conference. So in a week, all of us will be together. But right now, we are live together on the internet recording this episode. And we got a good one for you. In this episode, we're going to talk about kind of creating a policy when new members, new congregants want to eagerly serve. And how do you kind of triage that when people want to serve and kind of protect the ministries. And we also have a fun question about what you wish your congregation would know about you. But before we do that, I want to remind you that next week we have the Practically Pastoring Conference. If you want to be at this conference, you are welcome to come to the conference. We would love for you to be there. It's February 17th to the 19th in Tarpon Springs, Florida. So if you're local, man, reach out to one of us. We got promo codes.
But how cool would it be if we had gift cards?
Now I want a gift card.
Just print one on a card and bam.
Same thing.
Gift card.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Basically. If you are interested in
what a great gift you could give people. Hey, I got you a gift card of the Practically Pastoring Conference.
Dude.
Yeah.
Could be a lot of fun.
It would be great.
You can come to this conference for less money than it takes me to take my kids to Chick-fil-A.
Less money than it costs to print out a custom gift card.
Dude, you go to this conference for like
Cheaper
less
than
than
eggs.
cheaper than like a third of a Costco run. You know what I'm saying?
I will say the
No
price
tariffs
for
either.
the price for the five of us to go to this conference
Except Frank,
individually.
he had a tariff. We made him pay a tariff.
I had a joke about Disney World, but we're going to move on. Hey, if you're
I paid half
interested
a tariff.
in
Anyway, go ahead.
If you're interested in going to the Practically Pastoring Conference, go to practicallypastoringconference.com. We want to see you there. And also, we want to thank our sponsor, not just of the conference, but also of this great podcast, Church Merch.
Merch for your church.
There you go. Church Merch wants to supply all
What
the
a
things
slogan.
you need to help you have the shirts and journals and pens.
Swag bags.
Yeah, all the merch,
Frisbees.
Lanyards.
all the merch,
You name it.
all the swag that we're going to give away at the conference is in, and it looks spectacular. I don't want to say anything because I want to surprise the people who are going to go, but
I'm stoked.
it's
Did
pretty
we get
sweet.
those? Did we get those light up bracelets that are all programmed together, like I told you to?
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So
got
whenever,
Like the Taylor Swift
when
concert.
An-
Yeah,
every
dude.
time Andrew stands
That's where
up,
Jeff got the idea.
every time Andrew stands up, it'll light up. And every time he
So
sits
it's never
down,
going to
it
light
turns
up.
off.
Cool.
The batteries last 4 years.
They're actually just like Live Strong rubber bracelets. They're not even like
Yeah.
real light ups
Yeah,
because
they're just
he'll never
yellow.
stand up.
Why would I stand?
Well, we are thankful for Church Merch, and we're excited they're going to be a part of the Practically Pastoring Conference, and they're also a part of the Practically Pastoring Podcast. So to go to the link in the show notes, check out Church Merch, tell them we sent you. All right, guys. This question, all of our questions today come from Reddit, and this is an interesting question. I think a lot of if you've been a pastor for any time, you probably ran into a problem that necessitates a policy in this conversation. Do you have a policy that you use for new members serving in the church? We've been blessed with some new and young members who are eager to serve. I love their desire to serve. However, they are very young in their faith, and it would seem like it would be best to invest in their spiritual growth before allowing them to serve in ministries. Many of our ministries are nursery, Awana, church, children's church. They take them out of the regular Sunday morning and Wednesday gathering. We have made this mistake in the past. It seems that it would be best for them to wait for those that need spiritual nourishment. If you do this, what is your policy? Now, I'm going to add this caveat because I think what this person is saying when they say young members is like new people who are starting to attend the church. Because
Not 19-year-olds.
I mean, they could be young.
No, sorry, I'm not.
Both
I
and.
think they're saying newer believers.
Yeah. But when they see the
Like
word
young in their
members, I don't know if because when we use the word members, we're talking about people who've gone through the membership class, and
Sure.
so there's probably been some vetting. I would hope if there are members of your church, for them to even be members, they would
They're
qualify
qualified
to serve.
yeah.
Yeah.
Immediately,
True.
or probably already serving. But I'm thinking the way this person is talking about
I think
it
you're right, Frank.
is that they're just like new to the church, which
Yeah.
is a valid question.
Yep.
How guys have you handled this? How do you aspirationally want to handle this? What do you think?
I think there's a difference between leading and serving. And I think where that line is might be different in different churches. You probably should have a different standard for serving on the parking team if your church has a parking team than for teaching the new members class. You should probably have a different standard for someone who wants to bring a casserole to the potluck than someone who wants to lead worship. And then in my context, we've had issues because not everybody has seen the line between being a worship leader and someone who is serving on a praise team, to which I'd say there's a difference. One person is
That's a complicated conversation.
it's a very complicated conversation, and once
ministry,
you're up on stage and there's microphones involved, everything gets
Yeah.
more complicated. But in general, I think you need to say what is the difference between leading and serving, and anybody should be able to serve. I think we see that throughout the New Testament. There's no metric of spiritual maturity to jump in and start serving. I think there should be spots in your church for people who maybe don't even agree with necessarily all the things that you're doing. Again, whether that's, I feel like I'm throwing shade on the parking team, but there should be spots for anybody and everybody who wants to come in and serve. I think that's very different than leading, and that's what you need to define.
So you're saying you want to fence leadership positions, and when you say that, how would you define a leadership position? Is that something that's like places where people have influence, or
I think
public-facing places? What does that look like?
I think influence. I think teaching is a big part of it. You know, if you are going to worship ministry, and Jeff, you're the guy who has experience here, but how many churches do we know that hire out musicians from time to time? And some of those musicians may or may not be vetted the way that you would vet a member who is serving. But I know of fairly affluent churches that are influential churches that will go and pay a drummer a couple $100 to sit in for a weekend because their drummer's out of town and they don't have somebody else in the hopper. Well, that's different than, hey, you're teaching Sunday school to a group of sixth graders. I think there are some things that you serve because that's your gift to serve in that area, but you're not necessarily leading people. I think leading people is the difference.
I think there's another aspect to this question, because what they're saying is when they serve, they're missing our main Sunday gathering or our main Wednesday night gathering. So I think, practically speaking, a good policy might be maybe they don't serve more than once a month. If there's a need in that area and you don't have, there's pros and cons of multiple services. Obviously, if you have multiple services, you can serve one, attend one, and that kind of helps out in that area. But if you only have one main Sunday gathering and one main Wednesday gathering, maybe you're not allowed to serve both Sunday and Wednesday that week, so you can attend one. And also, I would say once a month. That way there's a rotation. I understand the question. Like, the desire is we want our new believers to be in service and to grow in their faith, and that's a great desire. But at the same time, part of growing in your faith is serving in some capacity. So there needs to be a both and here. So maybe a good policy would be one or the other, and once a month. That way you're not missing more than one Sunday a month.
Yeah, I back everything y'all just said. I would add to that, a couple easy changes you can make is in your new member class, or however you do it. When you finish the class and they decide if they are going to join the covenant family, you can have places indicated where they would like to serve. And in that one, that will help them get their foot in the door. And all those places would be like a pipeline. And this is one thing where I would say train your leaders. Like, for example, someone wants to serve in kids ministry, then put them in what I would call the kids ministry pipeline, where they just come and they do a first serve one week, and they're just mostly observing. And that way, the leader who's over that ministry or pastor can observe them and see where their strengths are. And then within that pipeline, I would have enough volunteers where your people aren't being sucked up every week. I know at our church, in our kids ministry, I mean, it is our kids ministry has grown a lot, but we still, as far as like nursery and just watching children, we try to put them on a once every 6 to 8 week rotation. And what does that mean? That means we had to, at one point, we had to more than double our leaders, but it actually created more space for people to step up, and it let people know that, hey, we're really concerned about your spiritual walk. The one concern I would have, because let's be honest, as pastors, a lot of times you're just using discernment when it comes to like leadership roles. If someone's new to your church and they immediately want to teach a class, that's a red flag to me. Especially, and I got to watch what I say because I know congregants listen, but if it's a class on polarizing hot topic issues or issues that may stray away from the doctrinal statement of your church. Because
Hey, God has really equipped me to teach our class on Revelation at this church that I've been a member of for the past 3 weeks.
Great
When can I
example.
start?
Or when it's someone who like just came from another church tells Tim or me like, hey, I just left this church, I was an elder there and I taught the theology class, like, use me now, coach. And it's like, why did you leave your last church? Like, we have so many questions, right? Like we don't want to move this too quickly. So, but yeah.
No, and what do y'all think it's okay to ever, to contact former churches if these guys are, I think
Yes,
so.
100%.
I think so.
Please do.
Yeah, especially if they're wanting to teach. Why aren't they there?
Yeah.
And they might say because they wanted to run the show. Well, then you just avoided a thing.
Yeah, I think obviously my main experience in this, in terms of people serving, has been in music ministry, and there is a lot of nuance there. Even down to like, is there a difference between playing an instrument and singing? I think there probably is, because playing an instrument isn't making you say words that you don't mean and like lie in front of God and everybody. If you're a atheist and you're leading a song that starts with "I love you, Lord," probably not a good place to put you. So. But in terms of new people serving, yeah, you definitely want to make it normative that serving is part of what we do here. And so you want that to be a culture thing. And I would say this is a good argument for the biblical offices of deacons and elders, because in those offices we have qualifications that are spiritually based. Now, I'm not saying that every person that serves in our churches has to have a title deacon or elder, but obviously elders are pretty specific, but deacons are pretty wide open. I'm one of my goals this year for our church is to sort of bring back and institute deacons again. We have elders, and we have deacons, practically speaking, but we don't have the title right now. We don't call people deacons right now, but we're going to by the end of this year, hopefully. And so in terms of like a policy, I think one of the challenges in smaller churches is that, like you said, Frank, policies kind of happen on the backside of things, where an issue comes up and you haven't ever needed to have this policy before and you didn't think of it. So right now our church is growing and there's a lot of new people serving, and kind of my method is slower rather than quicker. I think you need to, especially in a smaller church context, you need to kind of put to death the idea that like you need to move fast. You don't have to move fast. You can move slower. We have a person now who plays drums with us, who, and I'm just using him as an example. He came to our church for a good long while before he ever started playing drums, because what you don't want to do on the other side of it as a leader is make people feel like you just want them for their gifting. You want them as a person. And so you want to invest in them as a person and build a relationship. But at the same time, in a small church, it's awesome to have a drummer. We didn't have one for like 8 years, and now we have a really good one. And so that's a blessing. And so the temptation is to maybe put somebody in a position that they're unqualified for. This plays itself out a lot for us in children's ministry too, because we are growing a lot with children's ministry. We have a lot of kids. We have a lot of little ones right now, and those little ones take more manpower. You need like more nursery workers per kid than you do like when they're older. And so you just have to kind of move slow. And I would say, yeah, basic policy is, are they a Christian? In children and youth ministry, are they background checked?
Yeah, I was going to say that.
That should definitely be in your policy. If they're dealing with anybody under the age of 18, background check them. And like, if you're not sure if you should background check them, and just have that on there. And then, it's about who's got the gifting to do what. obviously teaching the Bible is really important. And so I think the elders need to know who is everyone in our church who teaches the Bible to anybody, whether that be young kids, middle school, Sunday school, high school. As the elders of the church, our job is to watch over the doctrine and the teaching. And so we need to know who's all doing the teaching. And if you give me a list of people who are teaching and, I'm like, who is this person? And they're brand new, then I'm going to have some conversations about why are we putting this person in a position where they might fail too. That's the other part of it. It's not just about like them serving the program. It's about how well are we as leaders serving that person as they serve the program. So that's really important too. And like what Tim said, yes, serving is a method of discipleship. One of the ways Jesus trained his disciples is he sends them out 2 by 2. And that was part of his training to them. And so I think you have to keep that in mind too. So my biggest advice would just be, everything we've said, and then just kind of make it the culture that you move slower rather than faster to put people into positions.
So as I am thinking about my church plant, obviously it's like everybody who's serving is going to be new in this conversation. And so I'm praying about like, so how do I obviously, like, I'm going to heavily rely on my launch team vet folks for those leadership positions. And I think like a long-term standard is like, okay, I'm going to make a list of like the different roles of every ministry and be like, okay, these roles should only be like by members, because hopefully when we have members, they are people who are believers. And then these are people who like, we can trust in like leadership positions. And then even beyond that, then like who's qualified to teach stuff. And that's another kind of other vetting. And then I should have, based on that, a list of volunteer positions, maybe in similar departments. Like there might be a position in the worship team where like, if you're a vocalist or a tech director, if you will, those are going to be members positions, or at least like vetted positions, where like a lighting person, if you have that, or a camera person, or a
what kind of church plant are you expecting, Frank?
Dang, bro.
Go big or go home.
Okay. Let me think of like in terms of like
Say
Lakeview.
you've been at a big church for the last decade without saying it.
Sure. So Lakeview has a
So like I need my administrative assistant to be a background check.
The LED
elder?
screen operator, though, doesn't have to be.
At Lakeview, there's a person that's running the stream.
Sure.
Okay. I don't know if that person needs to be a member.
Yeah.
Per se, they have a lot of power to sabotage the service, but like,
True.
But I think if you were having the bass player be someone who, I don't know if that person necessarily needs to be a Christian, but that person definitely doesn't need to be a member in order to play bass.
Not
right?
at Lakeview. At Lakeview, they do.
Technically, at Lakeview, you do.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think.
But what happens? So you have that policy, and what happens if you lose a couple of drummers? Then do you say,
Tim is
we're gonna
Acoustic
between the
set.
two of you, you're fine. But if let's say you lose a lead guitar player
Yeah.
and Christmas Eve is coming, do you bend the policy?
Possibly. We might reach out for outside help. I think every policy, sure, there's going to be like a circumstance where we might have to, vet
things
that
out.
differently and figure it out if there's an emergency. But our original policy was actually in place to help our worship leaders, so they had less vetting to do on their end, and we could do some initial vetting on our end. That way, by the time someone asks to volunteer with them, they know they're already in good standing with the church. They don't have to ask some of those other questions. They can just worry about, are you actually capable of playing the guitar?
So Tim, I have a question for you and Jeff. You said you're about to implement deacons, or you want to start instituting deacons at your church. So I have a question for you guys. Del, you guys are like Baptist adjacent, right? So you guys probably have deacons.
Basically, yeah, we do. And
And
elders.
then Andrew, you guys have deacons here?
We do not.
But
Okay,
not deaconesses. Just kidding.
So I'm unfamiliar, like my entire like life in the church, I've never been in a church that has the office of deacons. I'm obviously familiar with what deacons are, but I guess my question to you guys practically is, what does that look like? Because in my mind, like the way, when I look at Lakeview and I see what the deacons are, if I could like, and I'm probably wrong in this, are deacons basically practically the leaders of a ministry to have oversight over those ministries? So for example, like there's the first impressions team at Lakeview, which encompasses a lot of people. Like I think from the parking lot to the people who are handing out.
It's like 120 volunteers on a team.
So is the person over all of that a deacon? And so does that mean, like, for example, the prayer team has a deaconess, like they're over all the everything that's the prayer. So like, would there be a worship deacon or a kids deacon, or because you have staff for that, that's not a deacon? Does that make sense? Like, so are these like the heads of departments basically?
Everything you just said, that's kind of how we operate at Lakeview. Yes, if we have staff running that ministry, that we don't have a deacon overseeing it, but for the most part, we have deacon overseeing those core ministries that you just listed.
So functionally, these are like staff volunteers that you are putting in these positions. Okay, that's helpful to know, because
I think one of the distinctions for me, as I'm looking at it, is they are also like boots on the ground doing the ministry.
Yeah, so
they're not just overseeing a ministry. Whereas the elders, yes, like, we have just 3 elders, but one of them is technically oversees like the Sunday morning service. He doesn't always lead anything in the Sunday morning service, whereas a deacon of, let's say, the tech team would pretty much always be in the booth or scheduling somebody in the booth or doing something on the ground ministry. So yeah, I think for me too, it's like you can get creative with how you help yourself as a pastor. For me, as a small church pastor, if I'm looking at this situation and let's say there are people who want to serve, one of the other areas I can create a spot for someone to serve as like a deacon would be mentorship roles for older members who maybe would say, I don't have the energy to serve in children's ministry. But I can say to them, but do you have the energy to mentor this younger person who wants to serve in children's ministry and is young in the faith? And what that looks like is like get coffee with them a couple times a month, have conversations with them about what they're learning, be the one that calls them and checks on them, like have that mentorship role with them. And so now you are serving the children's ministry indirectly. And you're also creating like, you're delegating as the pastor. I don't have to mentor everybody. I mentor the mentors, sort of. And so I think that could be another way. And it also just opens up, because I know, like in my church, a lot of my folks who are like, their kids are grown, sometimes they feel disconnected from some of the like next gen ministry stuff going on because like their kids are gone out of it now. And so I've had that conversation with a few people where it's like, hey, but you could mentor somebody who's younger, who's serving in those areas, and still have a connection to it. And you yourself now are also being discipled because you're in a like leading mentoring role. And so you're going to get asked questions. You got to go figure out the answers to. You got to help somebody. And that's going to only deepen your walk as well.
Yeah, I think what I'm learning is, I think is contextually, there are certain things deacons and elders do. In Scripture, why were the deacons created? To create margin for the elders. So what our rule of thumb is that elders serve through leading and deacons lead through serving. So what that means practically for us is that if there's going to be a leadership team, then an elder is going to be over that, and he will have a deacon adjacent with him to help manage the technicalities of the team. But the elder is the identified leader of the team. Because he's not just responsible for making sure that the team functions, but for the spiritual health of the team. Because I'm sure every one of us has probably been a part of a team that functions well, but that's not spiritually healthy. So I think that it's important to have an elder in that space somewhere.
We also have a lead deacon, and this is really helpful because he holds the monthly meetings for the deacons, and then he actually attends the first half of every elder meeting with the monthly deacon update, which is super, super helpful, and it's very detailed. He'll send it out in advance. We read it. He doesn't go over the whole thing, but he keeps a detailed report for us every month, and it's really helpful.
So to this person's question, ultimately, I think that their thoughts are right in the sense that maybe if these are younger believers or new believers, they should probably like protect their spiritual health. But I don't think it means that they just sit dormant in church. Now, if the church is only one service, and that's, I'm sure when I plant my church and and Andrew, you have one service.
When you plant the Lord's church, but anyway, go ahead.
It's Frank's church, Jeff. You heard him.
I heard it.
when this church is planted, I'm worried about like the spiritual health of those who are serving outside of the service, like in the kids ministry and stuff like that, because I want to make sure they get fed. But also, I understand that like even at Lakeview, we're running into this. Serving once a month in the kids ministry is not like that means you need 4 times the volunteers, right? Like to be able to staff that. So it's a complicated like game to be able to work all this out. So I'm praying about it. But what I do think is this person's right in their hesitation, but there must be a place to serve in the church for them. And I think maybe like first impressions, like if this church doesn't have like a welcome team, I think first impressions is great because they can open doors and then sit down and be a part of the service. Like that's a win.
Andrew, what's your policy with ladies walking by?
I was
with
going to say,
backpacks
we
and dogs?
moved out of my office, and it is so distracting out here because we're surrounded by windows, and someone just walked past with a corgi sticking out of a backpack.
It was a doggy backpack. Is that a thing on Sunday mornings here?
It's not. We're having less and less dogs.
That's weird.
But you know what? If
People
that
keep moving
woman
inside.
if that woman's a new believer
Yeah.
with her corgi and she comes in this church and says, "I want to
She could serve with the dog.
You know where she can serve? She can count the heads of the congregants.
Or she could be first impressions because we have people that sit outside. So even if you have your dog with you, you can hang out.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
true.
But also, we usually count the dogs as well.
Andrew, my goal is that one day we're going to record this and you're going to say, guys, I've delegated the task of counting people to someone else. That's going to be
To the
One day.
deacon of counting.
Hey,
Wow.
the counting deacon. All right, let's move on to the next question. This is going to be a fun one. What are some things you wish your congregation knew or you wish you could tell them? And so this is how they kind of like kind of give some context to the question. I'm sure we've seen lists online, but they seem to be from one person's experience. What are some things that you wish you could tell your congregation or what you wish they knew about being a pastor? What do you guys think?
Counting people every week gets old, huh, Andrew?
I kind of wish that they knew that I was an idiot a little bit more often. Sometimes people look at me like I'm a real grown up in the room,
A
and I'm
doctor.
like, "Do you realize just how loudly I was singing in sync on my way here this morning?" I think in general there needs to be. I think people should hold their pastors in high esteem, and I hope I live up to that as well. But I think part of the priesthood of all believers is having our congregants realize that we're pretty normal people and there's nothing super spiritual about us.
I think to that extent, to your same point, one thing I wish people realized is the way you approach your pastor and talk to them, especially on a Sunday morning, can impact them tremendously more than during the rest of the week. And so what I mean by that is the comment you give them after a sermon, even if you're like, man, when someone after my sermon wants to give me a correction, I'm always like, what do you want me to do with this information? My sermon's been preached. Like, I'm not going to re-preach the sermon next week. Like, what? It surprises me how harsh people could be on a Sunday morning right after a service. And like, there's all this energy to accomplish this service, to preach your sermon, to lead the worship. And it's just like so deflating. Right. And it's just like, I wish there was a better sense of like, I'm not, it's kind of like the same idea of like how people are so critical to celebrities on Twitter. And it's like, well, they're just faceless people on TV. So it doesn't matter. It's like, I'm a real person and the words you say to me can affect me negatively and positively. Maybe I need to critique, maybe I need to hear it, but like, can we use some
Can I get
what's
some
the word?
lunch first, though?
Discernment.
Like,
yeah, can you feed me a little bit
hey,
before we
Pastor, you said 29 times in your sermon today?
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
But thank you for that.
Yeah, you were asleep the entire time too. So
You missed 15 of them during your nap.
I jotted a little list down, Andrew.
let's go.
You did not. I
No,
can see the
I
Chat
shared this.
GPT on
What?
your phone.
No, I would never.
I can.
I would not put the question in ChatGPT just to see if AI would resonate with my soul at all.
He wants his congregation to know he uses ChatGPT for his sermons.
I've been putting my sermons into Chat
It's
GPT when I'm
helpful.
done,
Really,
and so like
I
when
haven't done that yet.
I did this Saturday night. I put it in. I said, "Are there any obvious application points that I'm missing?"
Whoa,
That's actually good.
It was
Whoa.
yeah,
and
and it was great.
Really? Did you use any?
I used one of them. Yeah,
gospel
That's
one, yeah.
fantastic. There's a little list. So I jotted this question in ChatGPT and just to see like are there some of the things that I was thinking of, and there's a couple that are absolutely. One you guys already hit on. We're human beings too. Like we are not perfect.
I believe I said that they would know how big of an idiot I am.
I mean, yes, that is true. We can't do everything. That's huge. I don't care if it's a smaller church or larger church context. There's sometimes this like, I don't know if it's often spoken out loud, but it's kind of unspoken that of course the pastor is going to be there. Of course he's going to do that thing. This one's huge. Frank, you just hit on this a little bit. Sundays are emotionally draining. I don't know that there's anything quite like the feeling of
And physically too, man.
physically, emotionally.
I only have one service,
absolutely.
but my back hurts and my knees hurt when I'm done. Like,
We had
You should try sitting down. Makes it easier.
a guy who's been
That's
out of
what I've
town for a bit. He was back yesterday, had a big smile on his face, and he like waited in a little line to you know how it is. Like after church, people wait to chat with you. And it's super sweet. And one of our younger attenders, and he's like, "Hey, I just wanted to check in on you because I know we went to 3 services back in August, and I'm just wondering how are you doing." And that was like a really sincere, honest question. Like you just wondered, like physically, are you okay? Like how draining is this emotionally? And I told him there was a season there, like October, November, where it was really hard. Like I was having a really like hard season, and having Frank come on board has been huge for us and being able to kind of breathe a little bit. So
in that case of Celsius that you have,
I do not drink Celsius. Frank, how about this one? Encouragement goes a long way.
Oh yeah, that's good.
I think that's good, right? Like just a little. There's a sweet lady every week. She'll find like one nugget in the sermon where she just knows like this one encouraged me, and she's always has to tell me. I look forward to that now. Like I enjoy hearing how that like one thing impacted you in that way. That's really encouraging to hear. And this one I really agree with. Our families have to make sacrifices too. Ministry families are often just overlooked or not thought about very often. But the strain on the family is very, very real. And if you are not careful, you can forget that your first ministry is actually to your family. And I think a lot of pastors, unfortunately, fail in this area.
Tim, you're the one that had like 12 kids.
I'm aware. I'm aware.
I would say for me, the biggest one is just like we have a sense of humor. We like funny stuff. I feel like people hide their humor from us all the time. And, you know, one of the things that like being around, you know, particularly like teenage boys as I'm a baseball coach, like has brought back to me is just like, I mean, it's okay. Like your pastor laughs at things that you probably hide from him. And there are jokes and stuff that I laugh at that like I probably wouldn't tell that joke. And so that's a hard thing about being a pastor is like kind of like sometimes we feel like we have to shield our like sense of humor from people because, you know, we like have this unspoken expectation that they have an expectation of us that we're like, you know, super sheltered. Like we don't laugh at things that are pretty funny. And so, you know, if I could tell my congregation anything is like my sense of humor is probably pretty similar to yours, and that's okay. Like, I mean, I say this all the time. Like, you're going to tell me that Jesus was around a bunch of teenaged fishermen and they weren't like trying to get him to crack up and stuff? Come on. Like, they for sure were telling jokes that were probably not the most appropriate, but that were funny. And I'm sure Jesus had a pretty good sense of humor.
I'm going to say at some point, Jesus probably farted near a campfire. I'm just going to say.
That's an old Driscoll line.
Is it really? Wow. I don't know how I feel about that. But
Yeah, pretty good.
If you're sleeping outside with a bunch of dudes and, you know, eating fish, a campfire may have been involved with some flatulence at some point.
That's wild. No, it's funny that Tim did that because I had done the same thing. And it's weird that ChatGPT gave me a totally different list than it gave Tim. Yeah. It's like it knows us. So, but anyways, I don't know. Looking at all these different things it gave us, I think the one thing that I really feel is even on our worst day, we really want what's best for you, you know, because like I think sometimes people think that we're just trying to like run a show or do a thing. That's not at all what we're trying to do. And even when we're making calls that are like not popular, it's not coming from or it shouldn't be coming from a place of like selfishness. It's like we're genuinely seeking the Lord in what we're doing. So like if you have an issue, kind of like Frank, the absolute worst anxiety you can give me is Sunday after I get done preaching a sermon, a current comes up and says, "Hey, I need to talk to you about something on Thursday." It's like, you're going to hang that over me all week, and it's like a serious thing. Whereas throwing in the gap there, hey, my pastor really does want what's best. I think that a lot of assumptions could be avoided there about our motives, which goes back to we're just humans and we can get pretty discouraged as well. And if you want an unhealthy church, find an unhealthy pastor who's super severely discouraged and who's paralyzed because he's afraid he's going to upset people. I think that's an important thing. Like, we really want what's best for you, even when it's not popular.
I think one thing I would add here is Sunday is not my only chance for you to talk to me. Like, I'm available other days as well. So if there's something you want to chat about, Andrew, there's a guy who without a shirt on. Sorry, this is very distracting.
And barefoot.
And barefoot. I would say make sure your congregation has.
Is that a vape he's holding?
Stop. And a doggy poop bag.
Okay.
Make sure the congregation has your contact, like whatever the best way to get a hold of you. If it's your email, if that's easier. I don't know if you're open to giving out your cell phone. I typically do give out my cell and just ask people to text me if there's something we need to chat about. But I always feel bad when someone's trying to set a meeting with me on a Sunday and I don't have my phone readily available to check my schedule. And I'm like, can you just reach out to me tomorrow? Like, shoot me a text, shoot me an email. We can absolutely get something on the calendar. But Sundays are really difficult times to set meetings and to talk about, a whole lot of other stuff.
Tim, with your new Google Workspace, let me tell you about Calendly.
Go ahead.
Calendly is a great tool you can just hand to people on a Sunday morning.
Huh.
Like, hey, you want to have a meeting with me?
Schedule it.
Get on here. You'll have my calendar.
I have one more,
Yeah.
and I don't know if this is just me or if this is everybody. It weirds me out when someone calls me pastor. If they call me Pastor Andrew, fine. But my first name happens to be Andrew. And yeah, when
Weirds me out too. Hey, pastor. I'm like, who? Oh, me?
like what other profession does that happen in?
Doctors.
Yeah, but that's
Immediately had the answer. Thanks,
well, yeah, but I still
that is
think
true.
that's a little bit different
professor.
because they probably don't call you doctor at the grocery store. It's like in the context
Yeah, probably
of
less
where you are, in the room. If you're
If I see
you know,
my
in-
doctor at the grocery store, I'm hitting him with a "What's up, doc?" You know what I mean?
yeah.
You got
sure.
Yes.
There's a sweet woman at Lakeview who's talking to me, and she's like, "I need to tell Pastor this. I need to talk to Pastor about that." And it's
Bro,
like,
that's
I know exactly who you're talking about.
I was going to bring this up. That's even weirder. Or I have people in my church who will make announcements or preach sermons and be like, "Last week, pastor said blah blah blah," and I'm like, "Just use my name.
My name is
I'm not
Jeffrey.
I'm not a faceless robot."
yeah, this is good. Man, there's so many good points being brought up here. I want to hear from you guys. In fact, I'm going to post this question in the Facebook group. I would love to know: is there a thing that you wish your congregation knew about you and the ministry? Because, I think that the one common thing is that we're real people. I think one thing that's been kind of said here that I think is true too is this: as I'm as Tim and I are working together, kind of, thinking about Lakeview, as I'm dreaming about what the church plant's going to be like, and I'm sure you guys are kind of dealing with this too. It's like when you make decisions and changes in the church and you're like, hey, this ministry might need to change or even close down. Like, it's not because we're begrudging people, trying to control. I heard one time someone said oh, this is just this is just the pastor's vanity show, or this is just their show. It's no, we have a mission here to make disciples. And if we're expending sideways energy over here, we just want what's best for our people. And Delmar, you said that know that even on our worst day, we want what's best for our people. And it's just if there's one thing I can do is help the congregants assume the best about their leadership, and then ask questions and be okay with hey, this is why we made this decision. I do think sometimes pastors have a bad way of communicating the change.
I was going to say, I give credit to Tim, kudos, Tim. The times I've been to your church and seen you preach, you always start with hey, welcome to Lakeview, and then you say the mission statement. Or some version of that, and I think that's super helpful. And I mean, that's something that I'm always dang, I got to do that more. Just remind people of hey, here's who we are. It's just a part of it. Andrew, I don't know if you do that too. I haven't seen it, so I don't know. Sorry.
Every Sunday, he's just reminding you, I'm doing what Jesus is doing.
I'm doing what Jesus does. I'm
that's
sitting
right.
down, and I'd love
And there
to
will
eat
be
with you.
cinnamon rolls at some point during the year.
Yeah, we're doing chili cook-off next week. It's going to be
Ooh,
pretty good.
yeah.
Pretty excited.
Super Bowl,
super chilly.
Super Bowl chili cook-off, not during the Super Bowl.
Dude,
Yeah,
nobody
right.
has asked me about having a Super Bowl party, and I'm not bringing it up.
I have got asked at least a dozen times, and it's my favorite answer. No, we're not. I've said it over and over,
Nice.
and everyone's like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yep, we're not."
You can do it at your house, though. Feel free.
That's what I said.
Watch the game at home. Be awesome.
I've gotten 3 invites, and I've declined them all.
Well, when this airs, yesterday would have been the Super Bowl. So
Congratulations to that
Chiefs.
team who won.
Probably the Chiefs. So
Chiefs again.
yeah. With that being said, we hope that you enjoyed this episode. Please, we haven't done this in a while. Go on Apple Podcasts and give us a 5-star review. If you feel like this podcast is worthy of a 5-star review, go on Spotify. I believe you can review there too, and join our Facebook group. We want to continue this conversation over. Just search for Practically Pastoring. We have a Facebook page, but we also have a Facebook group. And the group is a cool community of over 1,100 pastors and people and ministry leaders, just trying to share ideas and make friends with other people in ministry. Don't do ministry alone. We'll see you next week. And next week is the Practically Pastoring Conference.
How
Let's go.
exciting.
We're going to be
Can't
together. This is going to be sick. All right. With that said, I'm Frank Gill.
I'm Jeff Simpson.
I'm Delmar Pete.
I'm Andrew Larson.
And I'm Timothy Miller.
This is Practically Pastoring. Bye.